Welcome to Straight Talk and Retirement, your no-hype source for financial advice in making informed choices about your retirement planning. Get on the phone to talk today at 314-931-5877 or text your question to 84126.
The opinions voiced in this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial advisor or tax advisor prior to investing. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and JBL Financial Services, Inc. are separate entities from LPL Financial.
Now, here are your retirement coaches, Jeff and Aaron Lapidus.
Well, hello, St. Louis, and welcome to Straight Talk on Retirement, your live and local, St. Louis's favorite financial call-in show. I'm Jeff Lapidus, president of JBL Financial Services. Our office are located in beautiful, hopefully the sun will shine again, downtown Olivet, Missouri. I'm a 40-plus year veteran of the financial services area, a fee-based financial planner and wealth manager. And I'm joined this week and every single week by my crew, my family, my oldest prodigal daughter, Erin Lapidus, who is also a fee-based financial planner and wealth manager, and her husband, Robert Markham, my son-in-law, who is our life insurance and fixed annuity sales specialist. Good morning, kiddies.
Good morning.
Good morning. We help our clients make smart choices about their money. The way we do that is by designing a game plan, a written step-by-step strategy, a real game plan that has several goals in mind.
First is to preserve, protect, and prudently grow the assets our clients have taken their entire lifetimes to accumulate. Second is to deliver a reliable stream of income, one that they can count on, so they can do all the things they'd like to do during retirement.
Third is cost-effectively addressing their health care needs, like helping individuals enroll in Medicare and choosing the right plan to couple with their Medicare coverage.
And then when they're done enjoying their assets during their lifetime, we show them how to pass them on to the people they love, whether it's their spouses or children, grandchildren, churches, or charities, whoever it might be, without Uncle Sam or the tax courts taking a big bite out of their money. And as their wealth managers, Aaron and I watch their money every single day to make sure they're staying on track. And that's why they call us the retirement coaches. Well, folks, good morning. Welcome to the last live show of 2023. It's certainly been an interesting year, not only in the markets, but also in the world. And so looking forward to buttoning this one up and starting a whole new year. Wouldn't you agree?
That's right. So please, if you have any end-of-year questions for us, now is the time. Give us a call, 314-931-5877, or please send us a text, 84126 from the text line. Before we get to those calls and texts, we do want to remind everyone that there are several ways to keep in touch with us throughout the year. Throughout the week, really, not just on Saturday mornings. Log on to our website, jblfinancial.com. In the upper right-hand corner, you can click on the Contact Us button, request a coaching session, financial, Medicare, or both, ask a question, and we'll be happy to answer that for you. If you send it during the show, we might be able to snag it on the air. Another way you can keep in touch with us is clicking the pop-up box that appears on the lower left-hand side of the screen. It says sign up for our monthly newsletter. We call that the Coach's Corner, and we do keep the last 6 to 12 months on the site for you to take a look at.
And this month's Coach's Corner, December 2023, only has a couple days left, so you're definitely going to want to get there and check it out before the new one drops. And there's some great articles there. You certainly want to peruse, the first one being, how much income does Social Security replace? Good article, has a very interesting infographic on what percentage of your income you can expect Social Security to replace in retirement. Always good to know. Next article would be, will you work beyond traditional retirement age? This article is a really great one. I enjoyed it. It lays out the advantages and disadvantages of working beyond traditional retirement age, and they're not as straightforward as you might think. The next one is a great one for the year end. It's reviewing your estate plan. You know, there's never really a good time to review your estate plan, so the end of the year seems like a good time to put some eyes on it. Maybe you've had a qualifying life event. Maybe you got married. Maybe you received an inheritance. Maybe your family had an addition. The end of the year is a great time to definitely put some eyes on that and make sure you're on track and things are titled and handled correctly. And the last one, get ready to visit the metaverse. It's a very interesting off-the-beaten-path article about how AI, artificial intelligence, are changing the way we interact with the Internet and the very nature of the Internet itself. Very interesting read. I think you'll enjoy it, so you're definitely going to want to check that out.
Again, we call it the Coach's Corner. It's easy access. Just go to our website, jblfinancial.com. Either go to the bottom left or on any page that you're perusing, you'll see a pop-up box come up. We'd love for you to subscribe every month. We're sending out thousands of these for you. As Aaron mentioned, we do keep these archived for your viewing, printing, or downloading convenience. And before we get into our content for today, we just want to remind everybody that all of our clients are folks like you. They're our listeners. They're 55 and older. They would like to retire, or they're already retired, and our goal is to create a game plan for them, which will culminate, we believe, in a fun and hopefully financially secure and worry-free retirement, which is all fun. Again, our phone lines are open. We'd love to hear from you, 314-931-5877 or 84126 from the text line.
And we've got our first texter all ready to go, and they write, can you talk about the taxation of stock shares after you sell them? Maybe a general overview. Thank you.
Well, first I would say it depends upon where you are holding your shares of stock. If it's inside of an IRA or a Roth account, then there's no taxation until you make a distribution. So you'd be taxed on what you take out of the IRA, not the sale of the security. If it's outside of a retirement account, then there's two options. If you've held the security for less than a year, then you're going to have short-term capital gains on the difference between what you purchased the share at and what you sell it for. So the differential between what they call your basis and what it's appreciated to. That's going to be taxed differently than if you own the stock for a full year. Then you'll still pay the difference between the basis and what it's appreciated to, but you'll have preferential tax treatment for holding the security for longer than a year.
Yes, and as we know that when you're getting ready to prepare your taxes, or you're having someone else prepare them for you, what we do each year is we offset short-term gains from short-term losses, long-term gains from long-term losses.
And that's only if you were able to make those appropriate sales, right?
Yes, and or even if you're holding mutual funds, some of those mutual fund managers may have made sales of certain securities they were holding in those accounts before the end of the year. You could have short-term gains as well as long-term capital gains.
And all of this is reflected on a tax document called a 1099, which you receive before the end of February every year that reflects all of these transactions. So you don't necessarily, the custodian in which you are holding your securities keeps track of that.
Yes, and I would certainly say that you can refer to, and you may want to refer to your December statement when you get this in a couple weeks. It'll give you a summary of all of the purchases and sales that were made during the year and the tax treatment of those. So it's kind of a precursor to and getting yourself ready to do that tax filing, which we know you need to do by April 15th.
But you do want to wait for your 1099 because, like my dad just mentioned, mutual funds report differently, so you will want to have the actual 1099 to either use to prepare yourself or to provide to the preparer.
Yes, and also there are situations, and we've seen these, and I hate to say it more than frequently, where fund companies may decide to amend the reporting that they've made. And so make sure that you have that in hand. Don't be in such a rush. If you're getting a refund, woo-hoo, that's great.
You'll still get it.
And if you owe money, you know that what you need to do is certainly do that, at least meet the deposit of those funds to the Internal Revenue Service by April 15th.
Right, because that's something that I don't think everyone realizes, is that even if you file an extension to submit your taxes, if you know that you owe, or you are quite positive that you might owe, you still need to make that deposit by April 15th. You just don't have to actually file the return at that point.
Yes, and there certainly is something to be said with doing things on time. It saves you penalties and, frankly, a lot of stress.
Well, funny that you say penalties, Dad, because John Carney was so kind as to invite me on the show Thursday afternoon, where we discussed how the IRS is waiving penalties for individuals that for 2020 and 2021 owed less than $100,000 in taxes. Are going to be waiving the penalties associated with your debits, I suppose. So they're not waiving the fact that you owe, they're just not going to accrue any penalties for you for that time.
And I'm assuming that's if you pay.
Well, yes. I believe there are probably some stipulations there, but they are waiving those penalties because I believe what happened was they were delinquent in sending out some notifications, so they've decided to rectify it for those 2 years for a certain group of people. But it's supposed to total quite a bit of money in total.
I'm sure that in the fine print it's called, if you owe, you have to pay, or at least be on a schedule that you're paying. Otherwise, if you're delinquent, then guess what? We're going to treat you like a delinquent.
Well, then.
That's never good.
No, and certainly every adult has to make a decision about whether they want to file their taxes on time. It's really up to you, but I will tell you that filing on time is it's certainly a low stress situation. You don't have to think about it. You put it aside, and guess what? The tax year is going to start in 3 days. New tax year is going to start in 3 days.
Yes, it is.
So today we're not going to be doing these are things that you should have done last year show, because honestly, from a
there's
business
no
point
more
of view,
time to do it.
That's right.
That's almost like kicking someone when they're down. Oh, this is what you should have did, but you didn't. So we're here to remind you that, yeah.
And we're not going to this week spend on things that you can, some things that you can do, and really the two things that you can really do. Number one is you're going to be making charitable contributions. You're going to be wanting to cut some checks today or tomorrow.
Aren't able. The money actually has to be out of your account, is what the rule is. It's not even the check dated. If it's coming from a broker-dealer or from a financial institution, the money had to have left your account at this point to qualify for the previous year, or for 2023, which I guess is still the current year for a couple more days. I think we should spend maybe a little bit of the next show doing some things that you're still able to do for the 2023 tax year before you file your April 15th taxes, because there are some things like making simple IRA contributions that are allowable in the next year before you file.
That sounds like fun, and you're a killjoy today, so that's okay.
What the heck? What are you talking about? I just didn't want anybody to think they'd be getting deductions they can't get.
There you go. Well, again, that's not. Fortunately, that's not our job. But
that's
our phone
true.
lines are open. We'd love to hear from you. 314-931-5877 or 84126 from the text line.
That's right. So while we are waiting for your calls and texts, let's get into our first topic of the day.
And we all know how important satisfying debt obligations are, especially in retirement. And we know those debt obligations can have a significant effect on cash flow. The question becomes, does your retirement plan work without paying off debt? And if not, what is the best way to do so? And in that vein, we'll talk about Joe and Sally. And Joe and Sally, they have a mortgage of $1,000 per month. The remaining mortgage balance is about $80,000. If they continue on their current track, it'll be paid for in 9 years. Most of each payment is allocated to principal repayment.
So first, we made sure to ask that $1,000 a month mortgage payment does not include taxes or insurance, because we know that that's an ongoing expense even after you've alleviated the mortgage itself. So Joe and Sally don't escrow their taxes, and they pay for their insurance separately. So we know that that $1,000 a month is essentially going right to the bank for principal and interest. And also, thanks for pointing out, Rob, they're not really able to itemize with their mortgage payment any longer because it's essentially all principal at this point.
So, and I was going to say, I think it's curious because usually the second part of the should I pay this off question is, oh, well, I have a low interest rate mortgage.
Sure.
Well, kiddies, when you get to a point where the primary part of your payment is really principal, the interest rate and the interest expense is really not germane, is it?
Well, that's a great point because you're not able to take advantage of that any longer in terms of itemizing, especially with the standard deduction being relatively high at this point.
So really what we get down to is, and we like to think of this as planners, is how much capital do we need to have set aside for you to sustain these mortgage payments? So why don't we go through an example?
Well, in Joe and Sally's case, they're paying $1,000 a month, so that's $12,000 a year using the prudent rate of withdrawal of 4%. We quickly find out that to satisfy that $12,000 a year obligation, you would need $300,000. That's a big hostage you have there.
So we're looking at $300,000 of capital to sustain a $1,000 a month payment versus the obligation of the remaining mortgage balance, which is only $80,000 at this point.
So I guess the big question is, why keep $300,000 of assets tied up to pay the obligation?
So, and I've been talking to quite a few clients about this lately, I think it's been a really unique opportunity to be able to live through a low interest rate environment really for the first 9+ years of my career, and then see mortgage or interest rates rise exponentially in a relatively short amount of time. I think it really changes your perspective on meeting financial obligations and how to liquidate debt or assist children, things of that nature. And it really comes down to, who are you going to pay? Right now, Joe and Sally are paying the bank. They're paying like my dad mentioned, they're paying a relatively low rate of interest, even though that's not necessarily pertinent to the tax situation, versus taking a lump sum of capital from a retirement account. You're going to pay the government in taxes. Who's the less expensive person to pay, I think, is always one of the first decision points as to what direction are we going to go in liquidating debt.
Well, good. So let's think of the example. We know that if they need $80,000, that really is going to require them to pull approximately $96,000 in gross distributions, a large amount of income taxes, especially as this is coming from a retirement account. Oh my God! And at the same time, this could actually have an impact on possibly on their Medicare Part B premiums, because we have to add this distribution to their other income sources.
Right, and that's a tax that's sneaky because it won't appear for 2 years. So, for example, if Joe and Sally made this distribution last week, so they did it in 2023, if that pushes them to a higher Medicare Part B bracket, they're not going to see that penalty for 2 more years. So in 2025 is when they would both, unfortunately, be hit with higher Medicare Part B premiums in that example.
Yeah, I think having an $80,000 obligation and having to pull out 96, 20% more is just, that's ouch. That hurts.
Absolutely. So the other possibility is, why don't we shorten the duration of paying off the mortgage? We talked about that there's about 9 more years left on their mortgage if they continue paying that $12,000 a year. Why don't we consider increasing the payment to reduce the length of the obligation?
Sounds like a smart idea. And if we would certainly do it in a measured way so that we weren't impacting their Medicare Part B premiums, and also looking to make sure that this incremental increase in income isn't necessarily changing their effective tax rate, which is good.
I thought of something completely different here. Is how long do they plan on staying in the house? That's a really important question when we, start to think about, do we really want to pay this off? Do we want to clear the deck on this obligation? Well, are you going to be remaining in the house? I think we got to work backwards from there too.
That's a great point, which is this, as I like to call it, the forever house, or at least you project this being the forever house? Are Joe and Sally going to stay there not just for the next 9 years, but maybe the next 20? They have no plans to go anywhere. Then maybe it does make sense to liquidate the obligation as quickly as feasible, versus if you have plans, like you've, as my dad likes to harp, have grandchildren in other places, you want to go stay with them, maybe you're looking to downsize along the way, and this is not the forever house. Why necessarily tie up your liquidity in the house just to wait to get it back out again later?
Yeah, it's like musical chairs with your money.
I wasn't even going to talk about St. Louis grandchildren, but you brought it up, honey.
Just think of it as your Christmas, New Year's gift.
Beautiful. The gift that we'll keep on giving. We like that.
You know what? We have a great... I'm not even going to let you come on with another grandchild jab. We've got another great text question about payments.
And our next texter writes, hey, if you're watching television these days, and we're not, but I get...
Some people are.
I get what you're saying. You see a lot of these car ads where they're having interest rates of 2% or lower. I was wondering if you felt it better to go in there and lay down $40,000, or would it be beneficial to stretch that out over 4 years and pay 2% interest or less? I think when you see these ads on TV with 2% ads or 0% ads, you have to be very, very discerning when it comes to the fine print, because there are many qualifiers and variables that go into that equation, and must have a credit score above 6 Gorillion to participate, and so there's just a lot of fine print there that you're definitely going to want to read and go through before you go down there. As far as plopping down $40,000, I mean, look, I'm kind of old school. I think cars are depreciating assets. So, I mean, if I were to go down there and give them $40,000 and walk off the lot with something right off the bat, you probably lost about 20-25% of the value just by taking it off the lot. So, I generally have a sore spot when it comes to cars because I don't put a lot of value in them because they only go from point A to point B. But I understand what you're saying. It's just one of those situations where you really want to be discerning on that 2%, hook, because that's the hook to get you in. Oh, come on down, it's only 2% here or even less. And then you get down there and you find out, well, it wasn't actually that way. It was actually that way for, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, and people with blue hair, and that's not you. And, so there's just a lot of gimmicky stuff that they throw in those. So you have to be careful on that.
Well, also, I would just throw in, you're going to have to pay the car one way or the other. You just told them you don't like either way. You like the interest or the full payment. So, if Rob makes an excellent point, if there's a lot of hooks to the 2%, maybe you're reconsidering. But I've also noticed that, as interest rates were rising, car companies really did want you to finance. You're not restricted to their amortization schedule. So if you take the 5-year car note, that doesn't mean, just like with your mortgage, there's not an early repayment penalty. So you can make the decision as to how much and how quickly you want to pay that mortgage or that debt off, especially if the financing company is offering you something, for example, $1,000 off to finance. It's not really that they are charging you more for the car, but it kind of is. If you pay in cash and you don't get that discount, what's to stop you from making 2 car payments, getting that discount, and then paying the rest of it off? I think you have a lot of options when you utilize leverage or financing. So it definitely depends on your liquidity situation as well. Is that $40,000 going to drain you of all of your savings? So I think it becomes a balance.
Well, great discussion. Again, our phone lines are open. We'd love to hear from you, 314-931-5877 or 84126 from the text line. I think we're going to take our first break of this hour. So don't touch that dial. We'll be back with some more straight talk on retirement right after these messages.
So you call your virtual insurance company to ask a simple question about your policy, but now you're on hold listening to this music while you wait and wait. Auto Owners works with local independent agents who tailor coverage to meet your needs and pick up the phone when you call, because you shouldn't be on hold so long that you memorize the music. That's simple human sense.
Ask Insurance in Union and Washington if auto owners make sense for you.
3 friends, a brew club, and an idea that became Pinckney Bend Distillery. Now that's a premium quality, handcrafted spirit made one small batch at a time. Taste for yourself why Pinckney Bend has won so many international awards. Or better yet, make a day trip to the heart of wine country and visit Pinckney Bend Distillery at 1101 Miller Street in historic downtown New Haven. PinckneyBend.com.
Martin Kilcoin's my friends at AAA Home Services. For over 50 years, AAA Home Services has been a leader in selling and servicing American Standard heating and air conditioning. Whether you need a new furnace or air conditioner or simply need service, AAA Home Services can handle all your needs from heating and cooling to plumbing, appliance repair, and electrical repair. For the best deals of the year, call AAA at 636-397-3200. Open 6 days a week. Online at AAASTL.com. Call AAA. We're on our way. Let's go Tigers.
This Jennifer and Wendy announcement is brought to you by BetterHelp.
I'm Jennifer Blome.
And I'm Wendy Weiss. In our family, the holidays are a magical time because of grandchildren, watching them open presents, taking us all back to our own childhoods.
The holidays are also a time to give yourself a little love, a day of rest, some time to yourself perhaps, or a decision to learn how to navigate life with some positive coping skills.
If you've been thinking about starting therapy, please give BetterHelp a try. It is entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule.
Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional cost.
In the season of giving, give yourself what you need. BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/JNW today, and you'll get 10% off of your first month.
That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/JNW.
We welcome you to our great big small town of Belleville, Illinois. Whether you want to enjoy fabulous food in our restaurants, enjoy shopping at our one-of-a-kind boutiques, or you want to enjoy live music weekly throughout our downtown, Belleville is the perfect place to relax and unwind. For more information about Belleville, Illinois, please visit belleville.net or bellevillemainstreet.net. Brought to you in part by the Illinois Office of Tourism and Discover Downstate Illinois.
I'm Jennifer Blome, and like a lot of you, I have anxiety about going to the dentist. I was so happy when I found Baldwin Dental Care. Dr. Kimberly Simons is the owner, and she and her staff understand what it's like to be a patient. There's a new patient special right now, a comprehensive exam, a cleaning, 4 x-rays, and an oral cancer screening for $99 or a $100 credit on your account. Baldwin Dental Care in the old Johnny Mac Sporting Goods store on Manchester Road. Just Google Baldwin Dental Care and tell them Jennifer and Wendy sent you.
This is Jeff Lapidus, the retirement coach. Wouldn't it be great to have a game plan, a real strategy, so that no matter what was going on in the stock market, the economy, or the world, that you could be confident about your retirement? Wouldn't that be great? If you're within 5 years of retirement, call me today at 314-863-0008. That's 314-863-0008. Or send me an email, jeff@jblfinancial.com, to arrange your free coaching session. Let's get started on your retirement game plan today. This is Jeff Lapidus, the retirement coach. Wouldn't it be great to have a game plan, a real strategy, so that no matter what was going on in the stock market, the economy, or the world, that you could be confident about your retirement? Wouldn't that be great? If you're within 5 years of retirement, call me today at 314-863-0008. That's 314-863-0008. Or send me an email, jeff@jblfinancial.com, to arrange your free coaching session. Let's get started on your retirement game plan today.
Let's talk about smart choices for your money. It's Straight Talking Retirement on the Big 550 KTRS. Here are your retirement coaches, Jeff and Aaron Lapidus.
Well, it's 9:34 here on the Big 550 KTRS. The first half of our first hour is over. But we'd love to hear from you. Our phone lines are open, 314-931-5877 or 84126 from the text line. Before we move on, I want to go back, if we can, to this last topic that we did about paying off your mortgage. I think the way that we look at things, and hopefully I would recommend that you suggest, is that you look at things as well as planning for retirement is truly an algebra problem. It's about inflows and outflows. Trying to minimize your outflows makes those inflows more valuable and, frankly, makes your capital more valuable and more available to you. And in the last discussion, we were talking about an $80,000 mortgage, which really required $300,000 of assets to be dedicated to make those payments. So doesn't it make sense maybe to obviously free up those assets if you can? And that's, I think, what the essence of the story really was, whether it's interest deductibility or not. For some folks, having that outflow, that payment, may make them feel uncomfortable, or at the same time may preclude them from having enough cash flow to make their algebra problem work. That's why I think having a coach, frankly, is really valuable, having somebody take a different look at your stuff and say, hey, think about it from this way, this side.
And since we're in the business of making slight corrections or amendments to the beginning of our show, I did want to clarify on the donations, which is that if you're writing a check, then yes, absolutely, if it's dated and postmarked before the end of the year, you'll have that reflected for your 2023 taxes. But for individuals that were donating appreciated securities, if that hasn't already been transacted, the check can't be in the mail because most broker-dealers, unfortunately, are closed today. So those...
And Monday.
And Monday. So those have, unfortunately, the time has passed there. But if you still have checks to write...
Go for it.
Exactly. But, we had a great text question come in before our break, and I think we want to kick off the second part of this hour with it.
Yeah, let's. And our texter writes, since it's the end of the year, let's have some fun and talk about stealing. What is your favorite heist or money scam movie? And I'd like to hear from each of you. Babe, why don't you kick that off?
Me?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going with, and you mentioned this to me during the break, which was... Inside Man, because I'm a fan of
Clive
Owen, and also I do like a Spike Lee joint, as they say.
I'm not as big of a Spike Lee fan, but that movie is watchable. I will say that.
Dad, what do you think?
Well, since I have a few more years on me than either of the two of you, I would say that my favorite movie is The Sting.
The Sting. Okay, we didn't even come up with that one here in the studio.
Well, it's because you're too young. But you talk about great actors, tons of great actors. Paul Newman, Robert Redford, etc. That was one of their sort of combo movies that they had done together. I believe it came after Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. But the music, what a great movie. The plot was great. The acting was great. The music was great.
I don't know that I have a favorite heist movie, but I definitely like several movies that have...
Somebody said exactly what you thought.
Right, I was going right to Shawshank because it's not a traditional heist movie, but at the end of it, the corrupt warden does get swindled out.
He gets heisted, that's
right.
For sure. Rounders, another great one.
I just love some of the scenes of heists, like, for instance, the very beginning of The Dark Knight, the one with the Joker. Mm-hmm. Where they're robbing the bank, and then he kills all the other people in clown masks and drives off in the bus. Or Tom Cruise when he's trying to break into the CIA and he's trying not to touch the floor. That was I think pretty iconic. So and of course Bane robbing the stock market. That's
another.
That's if you happen to catch that movie.
So really, it kind of comes down to almost every movie has some sort of heist element.
Any movie really that has a financial institution being robbed is going to make for great TV, and we can get into the reasons why we all feel that way. But it's just kind of amusing how that works.
Well, certainly, and you not to continue this much longer, but. Maybe you have to consider one of the most decorated movies of all time, which is The Godfather.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, The Godfather. Well, you know,
I'll make him an offer that he won't refuse. Exactly.
I was going to say, I thought of Mom when we were on this topic with the Thomas Crown affair, because I know she likes Pierce Brosnan.
Pierce Brosnan is great. Very underrated.
Right.
And let's just go on to our next question. And quick question for you guys. What do you think about investment clubs? Personally, I love them. I love forums where people can get together and talk about their favorite ideas or their ideas about where certain stocks or industries are going. You have to take, what you read on the internet and, what your best friends tell you with a grain of salt because they're not experts, but it certainly makes for a great sounding board for ideas and maybe even gathering some new ones you hadn't thought of.
Fun money.
Absolutely, and just as a side note, as investment advisor representatives, we're not allowed to participate in investment clubs. I haven't been, I haven't had the opportunity to do that myself, but I can't disagree that for individuals that aren't licensed, it might be a nice way to either learn a little bit more about investing or have a sounding board for your ideas or come up or get a few that you didn't have before.
Yeah, absolutely. And our next texter writes, "Good morning. Because of the lack of investment options with my work-sponsored Roth IRA, I'm considering opening up a new Roth outside of work and funding that one. I am currently 57. If I retire in
hold on one second. There we go.
If I retire in 3 years, do I have access to the new Roth at the age of 60, or am I required to wait the 5 years?"
So you'll be required to wait 2 additional years. If you open the Roth today with at least $1, you have to wait the full 5 years. So you'll be 3 years in if you do retire at 60, but you'll need to wait those 2 additional years.
The thing that came to my mind was if you have access to Roth through a Roth 401k option, you're going to have a higher funding ability through the Roth 401k as compared to an individual Roth where you have where you're stuck with a basically $7,500, $8,000 limit.
So you know what you could be clever if your company allows for what's called an in-service distribution. You could create your new Roth outside. You could request an in-service distribution of your Roth at work to go directly to that Roth. Now you've created the new Roth. You could continue to make contributions to the Roth account at work, and every year for the next 3 years transfer those over through in-service distributions to get the maximum contribution. But the real caveat is, does your plan allow for in-service distributions, because not all do.
Very good, honey. That's a great one. Again, love our text questions today at 84126 on the KTRS text line, or give us a call. We'd love to hear your voice. 314-931-5877.
And
we've got one more to go.
One more text question. And texter writes, "I have been with Aetna Gold Advantage for many years. I have yet to receive my $200 quarterly call MasterCard, nor have I received my membership card. I know people who recently signed up with Aetna, and they've already received both cards. What do you think the problem is, and when do you think I'll get my card?"
So not necessarily a problem. I am not an expert on Aetna's mailing policies, but in a lot of cases, if you've been on the policy, they may not have mailed yet because they're mailing out to all of the new enrollees. You can always call the customer service number and ask when they mailed your card. If they haven't mailed it yet, then the customer service rep on the phone will be happy to remail it to you. Or if you are working with an agent like ourselves, give them a call and ask them to find out for you, because that is one of the things that your representative or the individual that helped you enroll, they are able to do that for you. There are certain things that HIPAA privacy regulations do not allow agents to do, but in this particular case, having another card mailed out to you or getting to the bottom of why you haven't had your card mailed yet is something they can do, and I wouldn't necessarily think it's a problem. It just sometimes either things get lost in the mail or there's just a delay, because that Aetna Gold policy was one of the absolute most popular this past year.
Okay.
Yeah, so it is and I think what everyone's trying to say in a nice way is, If you're working with someone, call them because they are receiving a renewal commission since you've been on the plan each year. And if you're not getting the service you want, you can come to us, 314-863-0008. We can always become your agent if you want, just by signing an agent of record letter. Nothing changes. But then you put us on the payroll.
That's right. And you know what? Before we get to all of our next texts, what do you think about our last break of this hour?
Yeah, they're coming in fast and furious. Let's go ahead and take that break, so don't touch that dial. We'll be back with more Straight Talk on retirement right after these messages.
Winter's a great time to work on your trees. Hi, I'm Steve with River City Tree Service, your go-to tree service since 2008. Whether you want to trim your trees, need some deadwooding, or you want a tree removed in the stump ground, choose the ISA Certified Arborist at River City Tree Service in Baldwin. Right now, we're offering a winter special that will save you a lot of money. Call 314-270-8071. That's 314-270-8071. River City Tree Service.
I'm Farmer Dave, and here's my good friend and owner of MasterCars Inc., Alex Rosenberger, with today's hot MasterCars Inc. deals.
Thanks, Farmer Dave. As usual, we have plenty of Corvettes and muscle cars in stock, but we're also stocked with luxury SUVs, pickups, Jeep Wranglers, and the like, and that'll help make winter a little bit more fun. We've also got plenty of pre-owned Harleys in stock. Now is the right time to buy a motorcycle. The discounts are deep and no payments until spring of 2024. We have a finance solution for just about every credit type on motorcycles and cars. We need trade-ins too. In fact, if you have a very clean, unique, low-mile car or motorcycle you'd like to sell, call or email us. We'll buy it. We'll even buy entire collections.
So rev that motor and point your car in the direction of MasterCars Inc. and buy or sell today. 4100 Namioki Road in Granite City, or visit MasterCarsInc.com to get more details. That's MasterCarsInc.com.
It's the dead of winter, so come alive with Dogtown. Dogtown Pizza, that is. Fight the cold months with a hot meal, and with 11 different varieties, you can have it breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Shake off Old Man Winter with a bacon, or melt Jack Frost with a hot chicken, or a deluxe, or veggie, or my personal favorite, you know it, pepperoni peppercini. Beat the cold and heat up your winter with a Dogtown Pizza.
Why is the world's #1 selling brand of chainsaws not sold at Lowe's or the Home Depot? We can give you over 10,000 reasons. That's how many authorized local steel dealers you can find across the country. Visit one and you'll find a range of dependable gas and battery-powered tools. From trimmers and blowers to mowers and more, trusted by homeowners and pros all over the world. And you'll find service and help from experienced professionals. Real Steel. Find yours at steeldealers.com. Lowe's and Home Depot are trademarks of their respective companies.
Mr. Clean, Mr. Clean.
Of course I use Mr. Clean Magic Eraser to clean tough messes off my stovetop and bathtub. But then I discovered I can also use it to easily clean my patio furniture and even my shoes. I'm hooked.
And when wipes won't cut it, I use Magic Eraser Sheets. They're thin and flexible erasers, perfect for everyday messes, like gunk on my counters and sinks. They really are magical.
The reviews are in. Mr. Clean Magic Eraser and Sheets make cleaning look easy.
No one has done more for new development projects in St. Louis than my guys, Bob and Steve O'Loughlin. From Westport Plaza to the Cheshire to Union Station and their newest place, The Pitch. Perfectly situated next to the new soccer stadium at Union Station. The Pitch is a beautiful athletic club and tavern. Food and drink you can't wait to celebrate. The Pitch is where sports fans go to get the best seats in the house and elevated eats to go with them. Find The Pitch online at thepitch-stl.com.
Let's talk about smart choices for your money. It's Straight Talk and Retirement on the Big 550 KTRS. Here are your retirement coaches, Jeff and Aaron Lapidus.
Well, it's 9:49 here on the Big 550 KTRS, Talk Radio St. Louis. About 10 minutes left in our show for this hour. We'd love to hear from you. Phone lines are open, 314-931-5877 or 84126 from the text line, because we're feeling stronger every single day.
Texts are just coming in, and we've got a quick comment on our movie choices. The Sting has a 95% score on Rotten Tomatoes. I need to watch that again. Jeff wins the contest. Happy New Year's, guys. Love your show. We love you, too. And Happy New Year. Have a safe and happy one as well. And our next texter writes, I was told I can't open a 401k or a Roth unless I have a job. Is this true? I'm on disability.
Unfortunately, yes, it is true, because to make contributions to a solo 401k or a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA, you need to have earned income.
Unless, of course, you're married to somebody that does have earned income and is under those limits.
Oh,
so
that's
if
right,
you are
spousal.
married, you could be making contributions to what's called a spousal IRA. Right.
That is right.
And our next texter writes, Happy New Year's. I would like your thoughts on strategies you may employ given that some economists are predicting a significant worsening of the market environment with prolonged anticipated recovery. Well, one thing we need to understand with economists and their predictions is that they don't always get it right. In fact, a lot of times they get it wrong. And this current year that we're about to leave, no one really predicted the rally that we've seen thus far. So, again, these opinions, you kind of have to take them as you would the investment club opinions. You can't believe everything you read or hear.
But with that being said, there are things that, regardless of market conditions, strategies you should be employing, just because we never know what direction the market's going to take on a given day, and that you want to make sure that you have enough cash set aside to meet between 6 and 12 months of your monthly income needs. So if you happen to be more concerned about a pullback and a prolonged recovery, you may want to push that cash position out to 12 months. You also want to make sure that you have enough cash set aside that if you've planned any capital expenditures for the year, you're buying the car, you're remodeling something, you're taking a large vacation, you want to also have that in cash, because regardless of market conditions, even in the best of times, we never want to meet short-term obligations with long-term risk. So continuing to follow the rules that you've created is an important strategy regardless of what the market outlook would be. And then I would also just say that, and we've seen this, and Rob pointed it out last year and really several times over the last 10 years, that time in the market is more valuable than timing the market. Staying invested, history has shown us that the market does recover, and sometimes it recovers in unexpected ways. So, as my dad likes to say, it's a lot harder to get back in than it is to get out. So you can solve that by keeping a well-balanced portfolio, ensuring that you have enough cash set aside for your obligations, and then making sure that you don't check your account every single day.
Sunsetting debt, refilling your vault. These are things that if you want to relieve some, anticipated anxiety because you feel like maybe the market may be a little bit volatile, it never hurts. It will never hurt you to sunset debt and to refill that vault.
Yeah, volatility is the price we pay for expected future returns. And interestingly enough, before the show, what I thought I would do is I pulled up a chart of the Standard & Poor's 500 index. Now, most of us are not invested 100% in the market because it's not prudent. It doesn't make sense. But if we look at the S&P, 10 years ago, the S&P 500 ended at 2,340.
Oh my God.
Wow.
That's right. Today it's at 40. It's basically at 47.69. So what's happened is that the market index over a 10-year period has basically doubled, and that's after COVID. That's after whatever you want to say.
That was
political
after
things
the
that we've
political
seen.
things with the Trump administrations.
War in Ukraine, supply chains, that whole bit.
Right. If you look at a chart, it's always up and to the right, which means that the market's going to increase. Now,
historically, it's always up and to the right.
That's right. So we haven't fully recovered last year's pullback, but at the same time, or even the highs that we saw in 2021. But guess what? If you feel like the best days of this country are ahead of us, which I do, and hopefully your advisor does, if you have one. Being invested and staying invested means if you're staying invested today, things are lower. They're going to go. Hopefully, they'll go higher in the future. So, continuing to invest, continuing to put money into the plan is really important. As Aaron said, it's being in the market. It's not timing the market.
And we have
a very
absolute favorite question
We have a
on
very
deck.
special text question, and I always love to hear you expand on this subject, so we'll get right down to it. Dear Mr. Jeff, can you discuss the math for car leasing as opposed to payments and repairs and insurance, etc.? Thank you.
Sure, I'll do this as a quickie. I think that Rob, I thought addressed this very well previously, which was when you're purchasing an automobile, virtually, and I would just, this may not be true, but I believe it is. There isn't any car that is being manufactured today that is a collector car. It's just not. You're not buying collector cars. You're buying transportation. If you know that in the first year the average automobile depreciates 30%, why would you want to sink your capital into it? And that's what leasing's about. What happens is that car manufacturer, that dealer, is basically saying to you, we think that a car is going to be worth X or will depreciate by X over the next 2, 3, 4-year period, 5-year period, depending on your lease. You're not financing, as most of us do, the equity value, or what they call the residual value at the end of the lease, as well as from the purchase price. You're only financing that other piece.
So you're financing the part that you're using, so to speak.
The depreciation.
And what happens is at the time that you do a lease, what occurs is that you also fix in the price, the purchase price of that automobile at the time, at the end of the lease. The real question is that when we're rolling the dice here, is the car going to be more valuable at the end of the lease than they think it is, et cetera? And I will tell you that historically, and this has been my experience, and I've been leasing cars for 35 years, is that the car manufacturers tend to believe that their cars are going to be worth more at the end of the leasing period than they are.
And isn't it true, Dad, that there are certain car manufacturers that their cars hold their value better than others?
Yes, that's true, but holding your value better is really a relative thing.
That's fair.
Okay, I mean, let's be honest. Typically, foreign cars hold their value better than American cars.
Would that be a decision point in if you were to buy or lease a specific car, what its value is, how much it holds its value?
Absolutely, and again, what you're doing is you're rolling the dice here, and frankly, to me, it's not much of a gamble. Since I've locked in the price of that automobile that I can purchase it at the end of the lease, if I love the car, I can purchase it. If it's worth less than what the manufacturer thinks, hey, that's great. I can buy it at that point. Or if you want, flip them the keys and get a different automobile.
And go ahead.
No, it's okay. Again, I think and it's very different here also, and something we have to look at this point, is at the rate environment. For 10 years we had really low lease rates, and in many cases, and we have to look at this, which is the lease rate higher or lower than or equal to the purchase rate?
Okay, that's actually the question I was just going to ask you. Do lease rates compare to if you were to take a car note to have purchased the car?
Yes, and sometimes they're out of balance, and that's what's important is do the math. Know your math. Have them work it out. That's what they get paid to do. And talk to your financial advisor. I think it's a good idea. I mean, again, I have not – the only car that I've owned in the last 30 years has been your sister's.
And that was just because you didn't want to buy a new one after you had just bought her the car.
No, it's because your mom went and did it.
Gotcha.
To me, that's really the funniest thing, which is, as you know, honey, I remember when you were 16 and you came to me and said, Dad, you used to call me Dad like that. Dad.
That's when I wanted something, Dad.
Yes, that's I want something voice, which is all my friends have cars, I want a car. And you remember my response, which I know that you weren't in love with, which was,
then get a ride
or get a boyfriend.
Well,
one of the two. That's
fine, because sweet mom came home with a beautiful used car for me to drive, and I'm proud to say that I never hit anything once with it.
Yes, but if you look at the economics of it, it's kind of silly. freshmen can't take cars to school. So we're looking at something where we had an automobile that we purchased that we had for basically you used for about 2.5 years.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to cut this story short for our next break. We'll be right back.
Let's talk about smart choices for your money. It's Straight Talk and Retirement on the Big 550 KTRS. Here are your retirement coaches, Jeff and Aaron Lapidus.
Well, welcome back to hour number 2 of Straight Talk on Retirement. I'm Jeff Lapidus, the retirement coach.
I'm Aaron Lapidus, the retirement coach.
And I'm Robert Markham, your life insurance and fixed annuities sales specialist.
And we are willing, waiting, and wanting to answer your phone calls at 314-931-5877 or 84126 from the text line. And from the last hour, honey, I'm going to continue this story.
Well, please, now to the listeners, we had to break for the news. I certainly wasn't cutting off another delightful Aaron story.
We would never.
Certainly not.
Well, the point I was trying to make here is that purchasing a car for a child, especially a high school child, doesn't make a lot of sense. I just remember you drove it for about 1.5 years, and then it sat in our driveway for 2 years.
And then I came to retrieve it.
Yes, you did. It would have been smarter to lease a car for 3 years or 2 years, and then when you were gone, wave goodbye to the car.
Well, also, I think that's a unique family situation because my sister and I happen to be quite a few years apart in age, whereas if you had, some children in consecutive ages, maybe you're passing that car down pretty quickly.
Oh, right. So I could give something to your sister that's yours, but that's my car. Okay, not even going to go there.
And then you would have said something along the lines of, I bought it, so it's mine. Nothing's yours.
Huh?
That's great. I got to use that one.
Well, I mean, not to get too deep into the weeds here, but another shining dad conversation was when I asked him to please leave my room, and he said, it's my room. All the rooms in this house are mine.
Why did you ask him to leave?
Probably because I was a bratty teenager.
No, not you.
Never.
Never.
Listen, I can admit shortcomings from the past.
Very good. Again, our phone lines are open. We'd love to hear from you, 314-931-5877 or 84126 from the text line.
But you know what time it is?
I know what time it is.
What time is it?
Smart choices for your health care.
That's right. We're going to talk. We have been dancing around our next enrollment period with Medicare, but it's literally about to start in a couple of days. Now, we all thought we just went through open enrollment. That's October 15th through December 7th. But actually, that one's called your annual enrollment period. Open enrollment for Medicare Advantage plan. So if you are currently on a Medicare Advantage plan, open enrollment begins January 1st and runs through March 31st. You have an opportunity to make a change. If you didn't do it during annual enrollment, or even if you did make a change during annual enrollment and something's changed for you, or you're having second thoughts, or any number of things, you have another opportunity January 1st through March 31st to revisit your Medicare Advantage plan. And I thought we'd take a few minutes and talk about Lorraine.
Let's talk about Lorraine. Lorraine did not make any changes to her Medicare in the annual enrollment period because there was nothing changing with her situation. Her doctors were still in network for 2024. Her medications were all the same 2 Tier 1 medications that were covered from her plan, and she absolutely loved the benefits of her plan. Lorraine had a doctor's appointment scheduled for late December, and her doctor let her know she should be on a few more medications. When she started naming the prescriptions her doctor recommended, Erin noticed right away they were higher tiers like 3 and 4. Lorraine wanted to know how adding these drugs could affect her plan. She was upset because she thought she missed her opportunity to change plans given her new prescriptions.
So, before we jump into Lorraine, Sal is on line 1, and he has a leasing car question. So I know, Dad, that you're going to want to take this one from one of our faves. Good morning, Sal.
Good morning, Sal.
Well, Happy New Year to you all first.
Happy
New Year, Sal. Thank you.
Yeah, to you. Thanks, and Sal. The house, everyone there.
I leased cars. I leased cars for quite a few years when I was in business. The problem I always had was going over on the miles. When I go over on the miles, it was really expensive.
Yeah, they want like 25 cents a mile.
Yeah, whatever they start charging you for the backside of the miles. So I don't know. I mean, it just depends on how much you drive.
That's a good point that you didn't touch on, Dad.
Well, again, one thing, Sal, that you might have considered in the past or even in the future if you're looking at leasing vehicles now is to try to match up your mileage a little bit better with the lease payment, because we know that they do offer, leases based on short, 7,500 miles per year. It could be 10,000, it could be 15,000, etc. Obviously, the higher amount of mileage you're going to drive, the lower the residual value they feel that will be there at the end of the lease, so therefore your payment's going to be a little higher. But in your case, it may even happen that, frankly, leasing didn't make sense, because if you were going generally over 15,000 miles a year, the leases don't work.
Yeah, well, I was going over that. I was always hitting 17, 18, 20,000 miles. I was in business then. I was running all over the place. So.
Well, and I know your wife, and she's a wonderful person. You couldn't steal her car?
Yeah,
she was in business too. She was running all over.
Well, I don't know if she was running.
Yeah, she was. She did a job on her own cars. Trust me. But anyway, yeah, that's the only problem I ever had with leasing was the mileage. But other than that, it was nice because you could get a new car every couple of years. But,
yeah, I enjoyed the technology too. The technology changes have been really significant. It seems every couple of years. So I love having the backup mirror and the side mirrors. And,
well now I can do because we don't drive anymore. So I mean, it really won't go anywhere. I've got a car that's a 16. I think I've got 50,000 miles on it.
That's fabulous. Well, guess what? Next time you decide to get your forever car, lease it so it won't be forever. You'll know you're going to change it in 2 to 3 years.
Yeah. My buddy calls it a toe tag car.
My goodness. Well,
we might have to adopt that one, Sal, but we'll give you credit, we promise, okay?
That's right.
All right, well, happy New Year's, guys. I love you guys.
Thank you.
Take it easy.
we appreciate
your call.
that. We love you, too. Have a great day, Sal.
Have a happy and safe New Year.
Before we get back to Lorraine, we've got a quick text question I thought would be pertinent to the ongoing conversation here.
And our texter writes, are you obligated to tell your old Medicare Advantage insurance company if you are leaving the plan?
No. The great news here is if you made a change during the annual enrollment period and you signed an application for another Medicare Advantage plan, Medicare itself, through the Social Security Administration, takes care of that for you. Because you can't be enrolled in 2 Medicare Advantage plans at the same time, if you don't make a change to your plan, then your plan automatically renews. But if you submitted an application, they are going to take the last application that came in as the plan that will begin for you January 1st. So potentially, if you sign 2 different applications during your annual enrollment period, the second one is what's going to start for you. You don't even have to call the first Medicare Advantage plan company and rescind your application. Medicare and Social Security essentially take care of that piece for you. So in looking back at Lorraine didn't make any changes to her Medicare Advantage plan during the annual enrollment period because nothing had changed. But what if, and like in Lorraine's situation, you found out something changed, but it happened after December 7th, so you needed to add a new physician. Maybe you have more test services and consumption planned for the upcoming year than you expected, or if it's something as significant as your maintenance. So, for example, with Lorraine, her medications have changed. She added 2 more expensive meds than she had ever had before. With Medicare Advantage plans, the majority of them in the Missouri and Illinois area offer Tier 1 and 2 medications at no extra charge to you. They're usually zero copay. So if you added one of those between December 7th and now, most likely you don't have to make a change to your Medicare Advantage plan. But if you added something that has a copay associated with it, so that would be for most plans, Tier 3, 4, or even the Medicare tier, you're going to want to take a look at potentially making a change during your enrollment period, which starts January 1st. So you can front run that a little bit by doing the research on the front end or working with someone like Frank, our Medicare coach in our office, and prepare to submit your application the first week of January. Every application that you submit, so January 1st is going to have a February 1st effective date. Anytime in February will have a March 1st effective date. So if you're someone like Lorraine, then you're going to want to, jump on this as quickly as possible, so you only have to pay the elevated cost for your meds for 1 month's fill if, you don't have enough to get you through the month of January. So the important thing to remember, and we talked quite a bit about this during annual enrollment, is that not all plans cover your prescriptions in the same way. In fact, for most people, they really are uniquely different given your particular constellation of medications. So for Lorraine, originally she was just kind of a set it and forget it, zero copay prescriptions. But now that they've become more expensive, we definitely want to look at what different tiers across different insurance companies or even across different plans are offering. Some companies at Tier 3 are offering a percentage. Maybe that works to your advantage, but for most people, we want to stay with the copays because we want to keep you at a fixed rate for as long as possible until you potentially hit that donut hole if you're going to be in that situation. Not every person that has a Tier 3 or 4 medication ends up in the donut hole, but it definitely increases your likelihood.
I was going to say that if Lorraine was one of our clients, she would have been queried about medications and if she had any changes to those her physicians prior to the annual enrollment cycle.
Yeah, but this happened after annual enrollment ended.
I understand. I was just making the point here is that we would have checked for her to make sure that she was with not only the right company, but also the plan that matched the best for her. And so that's something you obviously have an opportunity to do. If you're using an agent, get them on the phone. Call them. Make them do some work for you. If not, you can always give us a call. Our Medicare specialist at our office, Frank Ellis. Send him an email, franklin@jblfinancial.com, or give our office a call, 314-863-0008. Happy to help.
Absolutely. One last comment on the lease vehicles, which is you still have to pay personal property tax on the lease.
True.
That is true. However, that's disclosed to you during your conversation, so you do know what essentially you don't know exactly as they can change the rates, but you do know that that's part of the expense.
And the lease company pays that in advance, and then you get a bill usually in January.
That's right.
Very good. Well, again, our phone lines are open. We love to hear from you, 314-931-5877 or 84126 from the text line.
And it seems as though our text line is a little bit light right now and no one's on the phone. So do we want to go into our next topic?
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about Tom. Tom emailed us and asked, what is the process for transferring accounts and taxation of investments when someone dies?
It's a big deal. So why don't we walk through these one at a time? And again, what we're looking at is, first thing we're going to take a look at is for a spouse. The Internal Revenue Code is generous in that it permits that there is no taxation on the transfer of assets between spouses during life or at death. So that's pretty much a simple one, but there are some things that you really do need to do, right?
And the first one being notifying life insurance companies, and they will send you a death claim form.
Right, so what will happen is you'll give the insurance company a call, or if you happen to be working with an advisor like ourselves, we will call on your behalf. they will mail paperwork directly to the beneficiary on record, which in this particular case most likely would be a spouse. And then you'll fill that out and include a original copy of a death certificate in order to either receive death benefit, or if you're working with an annuity company, to transact whatever decision you've made with that company.
Yeah, and I think when you say you will fill it out means we will fill it out.
If you're working with an advisor, then we will fill
Right.
it out. But if you're doing it on your own, then they'll mail it directly to you.
But you also do want to notify the health insurance companies, right?
Absolutely. And what they're going to do is they're going to drop your spouse from the coverage to reduce the premiums, but they will require a death certificate.
And so this is important if you are, if your spouse passes away and you both are utilizing COBRA potentially, they'll just remove the individual who's passed away from that benefit. If you were currently working and your spouse passes away and you were the source of the coverage, so your employer was providing coverage to your spouse who's passed away, they'll remove them from the coverage. But if your spouse passes away and that was your link to the health insurance coverage, that will trigger the insurance company to send a COBRA notification to you so you can access the original plan through COBRA.
Until you're 65.
Correct.
Or basically for 18 months.
For 18 months. Some specific cases will allow for 36 months. You'll want to confirm that before, you set it and forget it.
And the third thing that you would want to do is notify your financial advisor, because they're going to create or transfer the IRA assets to the surviving spouse account. They will also create the transfer on death account, replacing the joint TOD account. But again, both require a death certificate. That's going to be a reoccurring theme throughout all of this.
Well, and also it's important to distinguish so you don't feel like you have to order 7,000 copies, 7,000 original death certificates. Insurance companies generally require an original. Most broker-dealers, for example, our broker-dealer will accept a copy of a death certificate in order to transact this business, but essentially everything hinges on the production of the death certificate in order to make the accounts move, pay out claims that you're entitled to, etc.
That's great. And again, there certainly are decision points to be made whether a spouse's IRA account is immediately transferred and consolidated with your IRA account as well. And there are reasons why you may not, which we can obviously get into. So that's a pretty good summary of what happens with a spouse. Spouses are really easy. For non-spouse beneficiaries, it's a little bit trickier because some assets are taxable while others are not.
For IRA accounts and for Roth assets, you'll need to have a beneficiary IRA or a beneficiary Roth IRA created for each beneficiary. So if the individual that passed away has 3 beneficiaries, none of which are spouses, you'll have 3 separate accounts created in the name of each individual that was a beneficiary along with the individual that passed away. Their name will remain on it. Those accounts have to be created even if the beneficiary decides that they would like to take their entire inheritance in cash. The money has to move from the deceased's IRA into the beneficiary IRA before it could be sent out as cash, because essentially that becomes the beneficiary's taxable event. And so it has to be in their Social Security number.
And it's also important to remember, if you're inheriting an IRA and the person you're inheriting it from is on an RMD schedule, in addition to inheriting the IRA, you also inherit their RMD schedule. So that is the floor of what you have to take out every year, with the caveat of it being emptied in 10. You could take it all at once if you wanted to, but it has to be emptied by the 10th year.
Very good.
Oh, wait, we've got a quick text question before we move on. It was about COBRA.
Sure.
Why would you pay COBRA for that long anyway? Well, this really depends upon the age in which your spouse passes away and you have access to COBRA. We've had many clients that have, unfortunately, their spouses have passed away significantly before the age of 65, and the spouse was no longer working or was not working or they didn't intend to go back to work. So COBRA might be the less expensive option for them or the better coverage for 12 or even 36 months before they have to access individual health insurance. So that's something that you definitely want to compare with an insurance advisor or your financial advisor if they're qualified to discuss insurance. What's the most cost-effective way to pay for ongoing insurance for the surviving spouse?
Yes, and that's something that naturally we review with all of our clients when we're creating their retirement game plan, because that's truly one of the game plans, which is planning for surviving spouses. Well, great.
I think we were at the individual or trust accounts.
Right, and we know that assets under the current tax law, all assets except for treasury bills and annuities step up to the fair market value of that security or piece of property at the date of death.
For individuals that are non-spouses.
So that means if, say, you inherited you were the beneficiary on a beneficiary deed for a home, and the home was worth $500,000 at the time of death, that is now your cost basis, and if you sell it, that will be the number. You know, if you sold it for more than $500,000, you'll have a profit. If you sold it for less, you'll have a loss.
Very good. And honey, you know, you're right. Spouses can be different. In most cases, what occurs is that most property that are owned by spouses are typically done in joint with the right of survivorship. In which case, then you don't see the step up in basis.
Here's another great question before we move on. Is the beneficiary IRA done immediately after the owner of the IRA passes away? So it should be done immediately. There is not this isn't an automatic transaction, though. Either your advisor, or if you're working directly with the custodian because you don't have an advisor, or the individual that passed away didn't have an advisor, you're going to have to initiate the creation of the beneficiary IRA, produce the death certificate, etc. If you're working with someone like our office, once we've been notified that someone passes away, we're going to start to create all of this paperwork automatically, but the bank or the custodian doesn't do that automatically.
I was going to say the question that may have been embedded in that question was, are the assets immediately transferred? And the answer is no.
Right.
What happens is that if that person was over the age of, well, depending on their age, over the age of 70 or 73 at this point, and they were receiving required minimum distributions, it makes sense to have that last final distribution taken from that IRA, taxes withheld, before the assets are then separated. Otherwise, what you're doing is you're having the beneficiaries being subject to taking that RMD anyways and then paying taxes. So administratively, it's easier to do it on the front than on the back.
Right.
And we have a texter that just came in with a very relevant question. Can I do my own beneficiary deed on my own?
So, no. You'll want to go to the county courthouse and collect a beneficiary deed, sign it, and then record it with the county that you live in. They have official forms that you can use. If you go to the courthouse, there's no cost to you for them to hand you the form. However, you can also download these forms online, but they do generally have a fee associated with them.
Yeah, that's very good. This is something that you can do on your own without legal advice, but it isn't something that
you can't just scribble it on a piece of paper.
Right. You can't. It's not like a holographic will. You can't do that.
And then the final question was, do you have to go through medical underwriting for another health care policy? No, you no longer have to go through medical underwriting, but you have to make your decision in a timely manner. So if you elect COBRA, there's no medical underwriting. You have 30 days to elect, 60 days to pay. If you decide you're not going to go with COBRA and you want to use an individual policy that you privately secure, or even if you go through the healthcare the healthcare.gov website, so what the people often refer to as the marketplace, you have to do that within 30 days because you're going to use what's called a qualifying event, meaning you lost coverage because your spouse passed away.
Well, that's fine. So again, the last thing is that annuities and savings bonds, again, they don't have any deferral status at that point or tax preferred status. So any interest earned on annuities that are inherited, that interest is taxable as ordinary income. Most companies do have, the law provides that a non-IRA annuity that's received has to be distributed fully within 5 years. Some companies have different ways that they're willing to work with you to do that. But U.S. savings bonds, sorry kiddies, you got to pay the tax. Again, you have to have a death certificate to get the ball rolling. I was going to say, if it's okay, I know that we also have a checklist that has been created. I want to talk about a few points on those checklists, but why don't we do that after we take our first break of the hour?
That sounds like a great plan. So don't touch that dial. We'll be back with more Straight Talk on retirement after these messages.
Boy, the heat and the humidity of the summer is gone. We can open up the windows and enjoy some of that fresh air. Oh, wait a minute. You can't open up your window? It hasn't been opened up since the Reagan administration? Time for you to get new windows and maybe some new doors. Where do you get windows and doors? Well, you go to the store to get them, the window store. That's right, the window store, WS Window and Door. They've been around a long time. Larry Thornton, the owner, he's trying to retire, but he keeps selling windows. Now, they don't really sell windows. All they do at the window store is they give you a bid. That's it. That's all they do, and then they'll let their bid do their talking. Every window and door is energy efficient. There is no upselling. There is no marketing, buy one, get 70 free, or take 900% off. No. The window store is a great St. Louis company with great St. Louis people, and all they want to do is give you a bid, and they'll let their bid do their talking for you. So open up that door, open up that window. Make the phone call, 314-739-0002 or WSWindow.net.
This is Jeff Lapidus, the retirement coach. Wouldn't it be great to have a game plan, a real strategy, so that no matter what was going on in the stock market, the economy, or the world, that you could be confident about your retirement? Wouldn't that be great? If you're within 5 years of retirement, call me today at 314-863-0008. That's 314-863-0008. Or send me an email, jeff@jblfinancial.com, to arrange your free coaching session. Let's get started on your retirement game plan today.
Let's talk about smart choices for your money. It's Straight Talk and Retirement on the Big 550 KTRS. Here are your retirement coaches, Jeff and Aaron Lapidus.
Woohoo! 10:32 here on the Big 550 KTRS Talk Radio St. Louis. We're halfway past. We're through hour number 2. We're open. Phone lines are open. We'd love to hear from you. Great responses this morning. Last day of the year for us anyways, 314-931-5877 or 84126 from the text line.
And I know we wanted to touch on the checklist of things to do when a loved one dies because there's so much to consider and think about. So we thought we'd just go through a couple of bullet points on our checklist. And the first one is starting a notebook. You know, when someone passes away, there's going to be a lot to remember. Dates, people, account numbers, etc., etc., etc. Writing these things down, having it all in one place, is going to save you a lot of time and a lot of anxiety because you're not going to have to remember every detail, and you're not going to be able to remember every detail. So starting a notebook and writing everything down as it happens is going to save you a lot of anxiety.
Smart idea.
The next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get multiple copies of the death certificate. I would say probably more than 5, maybe less than 15, somewhere in there. Good place to start. A state licensed funeral director or coroner typically prepares and files the death certificate. You will most likely need a certified copy of the death certificate to claim insurance benefits, cancel services, or move services into a survivor's name. So you're going to want to get a few copies of that. Next one is obviously you're going to want to contact relevant insurance companies. If a loved one has died and you have an insurance claim to make, you're going to need a death certificate to expedite the claim. There are other types of insurance to consider in this regard: health, auto, and homeowner. Now, we don't recommend canceling the auto until the car is sold or ownership is transferred. Likewise, we don't recommend canceling the homeowner insurance until the house is either sold or put into a survivor's name.
And that would only be pertinent if you were not going to be living in the home. So, for example, if your spouse passes away and you plan to stay in the home, you shouldn't cancel your homeowner's insurance.
And I would just add one to that, which is reporting the claim to specific federal agencies. Big one is obviously the Social Security Administration, which is letting them know that that participant has died, whether those benefits are going to stop if you're married, how that's going to affect your benefits. Could even be the Veteran Administration, or even if you happen to be a railroad, a miner, teachers' retirement organization, etc.
And this would also be not just federal agencies, but if your spouse happened to be someone that had access to a private pension plan, so through a former employer, definitely going to want to notify them, especially if that has an impact on your benefits.
And the last one I would just touch on real quick is get the mail redirected. Visit USPS.com for a change of address. And that way you start getting all that mail, so there's nothing that's going to be either not an I undotted or a T not crossed. You're going to be getting it all, and you can deal with it as it comes in, and you don't have to play catch-up.
Yeah, Rob, I was going to say that this checklist that you created obviously is significantly longer. It was very well done, and I think we're going to touch on some of these other things that you'll want to think about and do. Maybe in future shows.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we could spend probably the majority of the whole show going through the checklist because there's so much to consider. So I'm sure as we go through the year, we're going to be revisiting this time and time again.
And this is something that we've started to develop, so we'll be able to pass it along to our clients when a loved one passes away, because we did realize that although we're here to help and are ready to jump into action with the investment side of things, there are a lot of pieces that we can assist with, or at least give some direction to, that maybe you're not even aware of. So we thought this might be a nice addition for our clients to be able to have access to.
You're absolutely right. Unfortunately, death is a part of life, and when a loved one does pass on, there's so much to consider and there's so much to think about that having a little cheat sheet, if you will, certainly is certainly going to help expedite and move things in the right direction. And you certainly won't have to remember every little thing, because if you have a sheet you can refer to, it's just going to make a very traumatic time go a little bit smoother.
Well, that's great. And again, our phone lines are open. We'd love to hear from you, 314-931-5877 or 84126 from the text line.
And speaking of that text line, we've got our next texter just butted in. Can I expect future CD rates to drop next year?
I would say I just noticed, right? I just noticed that mortgage rates have begun to pull back, not significantly, but more than slightly.
Well, and I think what's important here to consider is that the Federal Reserve is the primary driver of interest rates. It's been put out there that rates could fall over the next sometime, maybe up to 3 times, maybe next year. And that would really only happen if, number one, the inflation targets that they're hoping to get are still, we're getting closer to them. And number two, if we see economic activity really begin to wane. Reducing interest rates is their mechanism of putting a little jolt into the economy, making borrowing less expensive for not only individuals, which is usually seen by mortgage rates and or credit card rates, but also by businesses, the ability to access capital at better rates.
So would you see that mortgage rates tend to be the most sensitive when the Fed makes changes, or the anticipated changes that the Fed makes?
I would, my opinion is no. I don't think we're going to see interest rates fall. Okay. I think that what we're seeing is that the underlying economy is very strong, and unless the Federal Reserve decides that they want to stick their 2 cents in and get new home purchases moving, or they want to try to revitalize the mortgage market, which is really pretty much dead. I mean, the refinance market is pretty much dead. People had almost 10 years to reduce the rates on their interest rates on their mortgages, and if you haven't done so, you're going to have to wait for a long time. You really missed the boat. But are we going to hit the 2% inflation target? I don't know. I mean, I don't think anyone knows. The hope is that will happen, and when it does happen, the economy will begin to cool off. And if it does cool off, that's what Fed's going to do. It'll lower rates, but I wouldn't bet my bottom dollar on it either way.
So you think we'll still have some decent interest rates going into next year's vis-a-vis CDs?
I certainly hope so, and I'm really saying this for our clients, which are
reward
folks
the
that
savers.
Yes,
exactly. They're the savers. They're the folks that need cash, have emergency funds. They're having cash flow they need, and frankly, they've been punished pretty badly up until really the last 12 to 18 months on interest rates on their savings. And frankly, I'd love to see that continue, because guess what's happened? As interest rates have risen, what's the market done? It's also gone up as well. So all good things. Everything's going up. It's all good.
All righty. And we have our first phone call of the second phone call of the show, and it's Joan with an Advantage Plan question. Good morning, Joan.
Good morning. I was wondering, if you have an Advantage plan and you want to go back to a plan that works with Medicare, is that possible within this time frame from January to March, to the end of March?
Unfortunately, the open enrollment period only applies to individuals that have Medicare Advantage plans switching between Medicare Advantage plans.
That's what I wondered.
But if this is your first year on Medicare Advantage, then you can switch back before the year is over without any medical underwriting. If you've exceeded 1 year and you'd like to go back to a traditional Medicare supplement, you can do that at any point during the year. However, the insurance companies are going to request that you go through medical underwriting in order to be issued a new policy.
Okay. Is that a really detailed?
No, it's not nearly as extensive as if you were to apply for life insurance. They do ask 3 questions. If you say yes to any of them, it's an automatic disqualification. Have you been hospitalized within the last 90 days? Do you have end-stage renal disease? And the final question is, have you been advised by a medical professional to have a procedure or test done that has not yet been completed? So if you say no to all 3 of those, then the insurance company, you're going to give the insurance company permission to write your physicians and request your medical records. They're going to take a look through them, and they're going to say either, yes, Joan, we'll take you back, or no, we won't take you. And if they say no, you can go to other insurance companies if you'd like, but you don't ever lose the Medicare Advantage plan that you have. So simply making the application does not impact your current coverage, so you won't be left without anything. You just may not have the opportunity to get back into a traditional Medicare supplement.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question.
Great. Thank you for
Thank
calling.
you. You're welcome.
Good.
Bye-bye.
Question that certainly has been asked more than once.
That's right, and we did receive one more question about not having received insurance cards yet.
And our texter writes, what if we haven't received our insurance cards for 2024? We kept the same plans. Where are they? That's a good question, sir.
So, first thing is, if you worked with us, give our office a call, 314-863-0008. You can leave a message on the recording. Frank will be in the office Tuesday morning. He will find out for you where those cards are. If you didn't work with us, call the customer service number on the back of your current card and say, hey, did you mail my card yet? They'll be able to tell you the date that your card was mailed. If you didn't receive it, you can tell them, hey, mail it again. I'd like it. So it's usually a relatively simple process, and some insurance companies, if you have online access, you may be able to print a temporary card if you want the security to have it in your wallet starting January 1st.
Oh, that's a great idea.
But also, if you're staying with the same plan, your ID number did not change, so you can, if you had a doctor's appointment January 2nd, you could still use that card. Your provider is going to work off of the ID number, but I do understand wanting to get the updated card as quickly as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to say, why don't we take our second break of the hour here, because when we come back, we're going to have our Rock Star of the Week segment about Joe, who did inherit some money from Mom. And this really ties in very well with the last couple of segments we've been doing. So don't touch that dial. We'll be back with some more straight talk on retirement after these messages.
Hey, KTRS listeners, Roger Wigginton here, Don Rogers Limited, 6727 West Main in Belleville. We're heading into the holiday season, and to help out all of our wonderful customers all through the month of December, we're running our Holiday Inflation Buster Sale. We want to help you out. We want to help your pocketbooks out. We want to get you into Don Rogers and check out our incredible selection of men's and women's apparel. We're going to run the sale all through the month of December. And you know what? Why fight the malls? The hassle, no help. Park at the door, walk in, get waited on, get great service. You're going to see a great selection of updated men's and women's apparel, and you're going to save money at the same time. Whether you're shopping for yourself or shopping for someone else, now's the time to come in, take advantage of this great sale at Don Rogers Limited. Don't forget, we're open Tuesday through Saturday, 9:30 to 4. Park at the door, walk in, get waited on. You're going to get great service and a great discount. And as always, we thank you for listening to our commercial.
This is Erin Lapidus, the retirement coach. Wouldn't it be great to have a game plan, a real strategy, so that no matter what was going on in the stock market, the economy, or the world, you could be confident about your retirement? Wouldn't that be great? If you're within 5 years of retirement, call me today at 314-863-0008. That's 314-863-0008. Or send me an email at aaron@jblfinancial.com to arrange your free coaching session. Let's get started on your retirement game plan today.
Now, back to Straight Talk on Retirement on the Big 550 KTRS. Here are Jeff and Erin Lapidus.
Well, we're back for our last segment here on Straight Talk on Retirement. It's 1046 on the Big 550. Our phone lines are open. We'd love to hear from you, 314-931-5877 or 84126 from the text line. Did want to get into our Rockstar of the Week segment today, and this is about Joe. Joe's 64 years old. He's a new client for us. He's one of 4 children of one of our long-term clients who recently passed away.
This is like a serious death segment for the last hour of the show.
You know, I noticed that, and, but it's, like I said before, death is a natural part of life.
Well, I think that we're not going to be doing any funeral dirges here, but I really wanted to do was to talk about planning opportunities. And our generation, the baby boom generation, is a little bit different because we're starting to receive assets from parents, in many cases, sizable amount of assets. The tax laws have changed, and taking advantage of opportunities that are there for you is something that we certainly want to talk about and discuss. Joe's not married. He has no children, and he's also an independent contractor. And this is kind of important because he's a self-employed person. In his mom's passing, he received the following assets: $150,000 in non-retirement assets, which is cool. We know those are going to step up to fair market value at the date of death. But also he had to create a $130,000 beneficiary IRA, and he also had another $150,000 in annuity assets that he received from his mom.
That were not inside of IRAs.
That's correct. Quite a nice haul as it would be. He ended up getting almost $450,000 of assets. Mom and Dad were great savers. But Joe has some tax issues to deal with, right?
Yes, he does. And the first thing he'll have to do is he'll need to take an RMD of at least $4,500 from his beneficiary IRA, with the caveat that that has to be emptied within 10 years.
So the $4,500 number came from the required minimum distribution that Joe's mom originally had. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And so then, like Rob said, the new law requires that by the 10th year after the individual's passing, that entire account has to be liquidated.
Yes, and so as you can tell from the math here, 4,500 times 10 years is 45,000, but he received 130,000. So we've got some planning to do on that.
There's some differential there that needs to be made up.
Mm-hmm.
And also there were some annuities that he received that also have to be distributed no later than over a 5-year period. And of that 150,000 of annuities, 40,000 is accrued interest, that will be taxable to him as ordinary income when it's received.
And that interest has to come out first, correct?
Yes.
And he can't, unlike a beneficiary IRA, he doesn't get the option of spreading it out over 10 years.
It's got to be 5.
Yes, and again, different insurance companies handle things differently. In this case, not to make it more complicated, but 2 of these annuities permitted him to put off that election till the 5th year. The other ones gave him a little more flexibility, which is good for us. But his overriding, his kind of given here is that he's only making a $7,500 per year contribution to his to an individual IRA. He isn't taking advantage of retirement plans that are available to self-employed people.
All right, and that's always important that we pointed it out, because $7,500 is essentially the smallest contribution you can make to almost any retirement plan, even those that are accessible to individuals that are not employed with an employer but self-employed like Joe.
So how can we absorb the cash flow associated with the IRA and the annuity distributions while paying the least amount of federal income taxes to Uncle Sam? And Jim doesn't need any of these income distributions.
Joe.
Yes. Sorry about that. Exactly. So let's talk a little bit about him. One thing that he could consider doing, and something that we've recommended, is that he adopt an employer-based, even though it's self-employed, retirement plan for himself, like a simple IRA. And what's cool about this is that he doesn't have other employees, so he isn't making any contributions other than to himself, but the limits have been increased, right?
That's right. The limits have been increased to $19,500, including a $3,500 catch-up for individuals that over the age of 50. But I just had a quick question, not to overcomplicate. Why did we elect a simple IRA versus a SEP or a solo 401k?
Well, the reason that we did that, especially with the solo 401k, is that there was obviously there's a plan document, there's approval that has to be done. With a SEP contribution, it seemed at this point that it wasn't necessary because his contribution needs were not as great. Okay. And at the same time, his income, we know we could put aside up to almost $49,000, but his income, it just seemed that the simple made a little bit more sense.
So it's like a Goldilocks 401k, too complicated. SEP, yes. A little too high of contribution limits, simple, just right.
Exactly. So in this case, he could put away up to $19,500, and that way he could absorb an additional $12,500 over what he's currently doing today.
So it's a little reverse engineering. As he socks away his earned income in a retirement plan, he offsets that loss of income by the distributions that he has to take from mom's accounts.
And especially with this beneficiary IRA, because what we're talking about again is $4,500 just isn't going to do it. And so having a large taxable distribution later isn't really ideal. So being able to pull more from that IRA, and as you said, Rob, really almost indirectly putting that into his IRA is fabulous. But also, again, with the annuity distributions, there's going to be a taxable and a non-taxable portion. We could take the non-taxable portion of each distribution and use that to increase his personal savings so that, again, having a larger vault isn't a bad deal, especially if he wants to make some type of additional significant purchase, or because he's 64, if he decides that he wants to either slow down his employment, the amount he's working, or even retire, we'll now have some cash flow, a buffer there that he can absorb without paying income taxes.
And then that kind of leads to the next piece, which is we thought it would make sense for Joe to delay taking his Social Security income until at least he's 69 years old. So that way, not only is his Social Security benefit going to grow, but he doesn't have any additional taxable income to deal with. We can work with not a stagnant number, but we can work with a number that's solely based off of his income. We're not adding any additional Social Security benefits to that as we're attempting to liquidate some of mom's taxable accounts.
So when you add all this up, the end result, we have essentially transferred his mother's beneficiary IRA into his own IRA and avoided any additional income taxes on the interest income from the annuities.
It's better to be lucky than good. You know, I mean, what's really neat is that his reaction to this was wasn't curious to me, but you know, again, it was different. You know, his first thing was, well, I have this. It was funny. His first thing he said to me was, I have a guy that does my taxes. Do you have somebody that can replace him?
We've heard that sometimes.
And the reason being is that, and we also know he has another financial advisor, which he's also going to be getting rid of. But why? You know, he's thinking, why didn't somebody else bring this up to me? Why didn't they make me aware of this? And frankly, in his case, why didn't they make him aware of the fact that he, as a self-employed person, could have had higher contribution limits available to him and paid less taxes over the last 5-10 years? It's a big deal. Having another set of eyes looking at these is real important. And I think that's why, frankly, I love the relationship we have with our clients, because it's not just about investing the assets. It's trying to figure out how can we reduce those taxes for them, at the same time get them to a place they want to go in a different way than they thought.
And this is true not only for our clients like Joe who are inheriting money from mom and dad, but really to help planning for our current clients when they pass away, to pass those assets on to their children, to their grandchildren. In a lot of cases, we have individuals that say, you know, they're inheriting a large amount of money. They can pay the taxes, but wouldn't it be great if, you know, even if you're saying they could pay the taxes, well, why don't we do that in the most efficient possible way for them and also for yourselves? You don't want to give over more than's absolutely necessary to the federal government of, you know, essentially the assets you took your entire lifetime to accumulate. You want those to go on to your children, to your grandchildren, to churches and charities that you care about.
And, you know, at the end of the day, Uncle Sam is going to get paid. So, you know, you're going to want to sit down with someone to figure out what is the most pain-free way of getting Uncle Sam their money so that my beneficiaries, my descendants, they can have what I worked for. And, you know, that's why you got to come into the office and you got to sit down with the retirement coaches.
That's right.
Well, you know, what's fun here is because, you know, we're always talking about taxes in the code. And, you know, the way I've always looked at the Internal Revenue Code is that this is a playbook. And understanding how the plays work and being able to use these is, frankly, an incentive for us to do so. And Uncle Sam wants us to do this. And we're not talking about anywhere going into the gray areas. And what's fun for you, for our listeners, those folks that listen to this topic about Joe this week, is that Joe has 3 other siblings. We're going to talk a little bit about them in different segments during the week, and they're all a little different. So being able to customize a game plan for each one of these individual participants to help them meet their long-term goals, it's a blast. It's fun. It's an algebra problem. And again, I guess we've got about 2 minutes left in the show. Our phone lines are open. We'd love to hear from you, 314-931-5877 or 84126 from the text line.
And our next texter writes, I've heard you speak about beneficiary IRAs all morning and how they have to be emptied in 10 years. What happens if you don't have it all emptied in 10 years? Pain.
So if you don't have it emptied by the 10th year, the IRS is going to penalize you I believe they dropped it to 30%. Is that correct?
I think it's 25%.
I'm sorry, 25% of. So let's say that in the 10th year, Joe had $10,000 left in that beneficiary IRA. There's going to be a penalty of $2,500 that he's going to owe because that's 25% of the $10,000 that remained after the 10th year. Then Joe's going to have to take the $10,000 out, pay the taxes on that. So, big penalty. Let's avoid it.
Exactly, but you don't want to avoid is giving us a call at 314-863-0008, especially if you're within 5 years of retirement or are already retired. We'd love to hear from you. Happy end of 2023, and we're looking forward to 2024 with all of you here on the Big 550 KTRS. Happy New Year again.
Healthy, safe this holiday weekend. We'll see you next week.
And have a great day. The opinions voiced in this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial advisor or tax advisor prior to investing. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and JBL Financial Services, Inc. are separate entities from LPL Financial.